Hello and welcome to Tribe of Humankind, where we've come together to talk about the spiritual evolution of the human species. Today's Saturday, April 15th, and we're already fired up deep into a conversation. We have to hit record to go ahead and capture some of it. And I'll let Mono and Lex say hello and introduce themselves. And we'll go ahead and include kind of the hosting into presence with your introduction, just to go ahead and use the floor to speak to anything big that's gone down in your life. And now, since the last conversation, it's been 3 weeks now, I believe, since we've gathered for this recorded conversation. And yeah, what's big in your heart, big in your soul, big in your field right now that you'd like to speak out and acknowledge before we drop into a conversation about what's burning inside of us here?
I'll start. Yeah, my name is Mano. I feel a little bit under the weather, so my voice is a bit scratchy. For me, there's a lot about evolution that's present these days. It's almost like reconstruction of my own being, really looking at all the aspects and basically remodeling in its time, because I'm 28, turning 29 in a week from today. So it's like thank you, Saturn return right around the corner. And every 7 year, the human cell, like a human body, it's like you have a brand new body because every cell dies and you have a whole new system that's coming in. So yeah, this is my fourth new, I guess, physical body that I'll be going into, and yeah, it calls for changes. And a lot of the changes that I am recognizing, for me, it's all internal. It may not seem as much on the external, but internally, I'm being called to shift a lot of fundamental attachment that I have, and it's been a challenge. There's a lot of identity that I notice that's attached to a certain way of being. So it's been a struggle. It's like a tug of war. The good side pulls, and then the other side that doesn't want to change also pulls. So learning to play with it and surrender into it, and keep asking for guidance and clarity, and definitely strength. Stay strong through it all. That's a little intro about me, and I'll pass it on to Lex.
Before we turn it over to Lex, I just want to ask a question. Can you name one of those attachments that you're kind of wrestling with right now?
One of those attachment I'm wrestling with right now. Yeah. I think the biggest one would be, I think this is like a struggle for like most people, but for me, it's like pornography, like letting go. And it's a big one. Yeah, it's been a really long time, 14 years of watching porn and wanting to completely cut that ties out. And I've been struggling with that. I've sat with medicines with it, and it's good for like a week or two, but it's a very strong presence in my life. So yeah. It's
Cool.
literally tugging at my like life force, like literally. So I'm like, okay, I gotta do this, and I gotta find a way to do this,
Yeah.
Yeah, I can just notice like the heat of like the level of energy in my body, just even verbalizing it, because it's one of those things that wants to hide. It's a taboo subject, but I think I need to verbalize it in order to just address it so I can let it go.
Yeah. I feel you. I've had my own struggle with that. And like it's a type of addiction. And yeah, I think at its root it's exploitation on every level,
Yeah,
everyone involved, and mostly finishing with draining of our life force.
exactly. Yeah, I've never really had any sense of addiction like to drugs or anything like that, but this is like one thing. Um, every time I would, commit, like, okay, I'm letting it go. That'd be good for like, I've done like a 30-day challenges. It's great. But after the 30 days, it's something like it tugs at me. Um, Even the shamans that I worked with, they say, this is like one of the stronger entity that, it has like a force of its own, and it's after your orgasm, your life force energy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
This
Wow.
is a big topic, right? Um, so I'm aware of this sort of stuff, and my thoughts about it are that my view is that there is a dark force and a dark agenda and dark entities that have they do things, they work certain ways, and they sort of clock in, and they graft, and they're part of that is we would naturally, if things were more natural, if we would pair up and we would be part of relationships that were naturally sort of connections that would flow with sort of love and intimacy and empathy and sort of divine circuitry of male and female, I think. And I think that the world we live in has removed you made it very difficult to have those relationships. Everything's so transient, and everyone's got their head full of things that are pulling them in different directions and changing the course of their destiny. So they're not pairing up with somebody. We're not pairing up with people, um, and so that circuitry is desperately trying to connect. And then the next thing you have is this instant version of connection. The pornography is like an instant bang, and I think that it's all planned, and I think that, as you said, it's like sex magic, and that energy goes somewhere where it's not helpful to us, like this is a big thing.
It is. And it is, yeah, very much exploiting like a natural desire, like I would say healthy desire. And then like it's exploiting that healthy desire. It's a total hook on a worm kind of thing. You're like, hey, I'm hungry. And you're like, you're like hooked on that. Like there's, yeah. And I'm all for that healthy exploration of our sexuality. And I think it's better done in the real world between you and people you're attracted to. And like that's where the fun exchange is it's like interacting and feeling that attraction, intention, and also like responsibility of like working with your own sexual power and connecting that with someone else's. And like things get real and get big fast when two people's sexual energy comes together. It's big creation. It's our creative power. And like even the tension of it building and not, like having anyone to connect with is a building of power too. And it builds like I don't know, a crescendoing energy that wants to be used in a beautiful way. And then that's like the challenge to learn how to do that. And you know, I believe, there was a healthier epoch of humanity that worked with maybe sexual priests and priestesses, these kind of things, where sexual arts were a place where you could go and have people in their power helping and working in those ways. I would say a lot of what's happening on the planet today is not in that realm. And yeah. And I would also say that very few people, if they were wealthy and had millionaires, how many of those people would choose pornography if they were already wealthy? It's like their desire for money or need for money takes them in that, and they're usually exploited. And lots of other people are making money that isn't the person in the photograph or in the video or in the film or whatever. Like lots of other hands are making money off of that and exploiting that energy. And it's kind of, there's a lot of, to like, peel it all back, it's full of darkness, and there's no good intentions or good creation coming from it, and it's robbing us of our real creative power in the end.
Absolutely. I mean, having all these like, intellectual understanding, I find that it's one thing versus like when I feel like when I'm caught in the moment of it, and this is me choosing to identify, when I'm like in the process of, whether I'm watching porn or like I'm masturbating, in that process of it, I find that, there's like almost lack of control. It's almost like a hamster in a hamster wheel that just like you keep running, just like addiction to that neurochemical release, or it's that that I find like just too harder to peel away from or break free from. It's almost like the addiction to that the feeling,
It's real.
which I definitely feel for. Just obviously like just looking at all the negative impact it has on my life. I guess what feels like even more powerless, it's not being able to do anything about it, like a take back control, and it's
Yeah, I think you're on a more powerful path than you're giving yourself credit for, because all addictions have in common that like we got to bring our awareness around them first, even while we're doing them. Like I'm not eating healthy, I'm doing something that whatever, it's like we got to be aware that while it's happening. Like, oh, I want smoking, am I doing it habitually, am I doing it intentionally, how am I doing it, like, and we bring awareness to it first, and then like the guilt is tricky, because guilt, and then maybe its initial form is healthy because it's kind of like it's a signal, but then guilt on another level can just like eat you up and make you feel terrible about yourself, and other people can make you feel more guilty. Then and all that guilt is not really helping after a while, of like just making you feel like a rotten human being or something, and so it's like there's the guilt needs to be acknowledged and worked with, but then not be like drowned in either. And then just the awareness, and then everything's a choice, and then empower yourself with the choice. And mostly it's habits. It's like we got to like break habits. Habits themselves are tough to break, no matter what those habits are, and like we got to like break the routine of like the 1, 2, 3, and just to give us some space of like creating new habits in between, to like give ourselves some more space to think about it. Like I'm thinking about it. What's something I can do to give myself 10 or 15 minutes to create a new habit before I follow through with where I'm heading, because I have some awareness that like, oh, I'm about to go explore some porn right now or something like that. Like, can I go take a 10-minute walk, 15-minute walk? Kind of like get outside and see if there's something to inspire me, and be curious about like, what am I really craving right now? Where's the empty in my life that I'm trying to fill? Because a lot of that's like, most addictions are got something deeper going on. I'm feeling bored, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling disconnected, I'm feeling like a victim or whatever, like nobody loves me and nobody understands me, or I can't meet new people, or maybe there's other things in our like last relationships that we're still confused about why they didn't work out, or still hurt about, or we weren't seen, or we weren't like, and I think as we do work with those real things, some of those unhealthier cravings are controlling us, and the reflex, it's like
yeah, definitely. I mean, like the piece about like going for a walk, just to shift the energy, get the energy moving in a different direction. These are definitely things that, you know, came to me, and these are things that I've done, applied. Yeah, it almost like I feel like I need to take a completely different approach to it. You know, just I've been like a days without using my phone or my computer, or like even weeks or months. Those are great. You know, when I'm there, like when I'm in the jungle, or like, you know, doing like a deep diet test and stuff, because none of those stuffs are allowed anyways. But what happens when I am in the real world doing like real stuff, when there's like real problem, like, you know, like a frustration or this and that happen, and almost like a porn becomes like a clutch.
Oh.
So yeah, so, you know, like traveling is like one of the ways, like no problem, no distraction, just, you know, because I'm constantly on different things. But what happened when it's like a day-to-day things, like very like a normal routine. Yeah. So yeah, so yeah, I'm at a point right now really questioning, how do I make this like a massive shift, you know, within myself. And it's like a lot of effort, from my end, to really recognize and to have that willpower to be able to shift that. And I find, like, you know, I just keep noticing this self-talk, or like this mental chatter in my mind. What's the point of it anyways? Like, if the world's going to shit, like, what's the point of it anyways, right? So, and that kind of self-talk, I find that doesn't help either. Just like, okay, you're going to die anyway, so why not just have a little bit of pleasure? And, you know, meanwhile, you see, it's, yeah.
That's a big one. That's a good awareness that you're like, hey, like this life feels pointless, meaningless, or like an inevitable destructive end. That's like a heavy thing to weigh on the psyche that you're trying to de-stress from.
Excuse me, yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. And those are things, you know, I observe, and, you know, try not to get hooked by it. But it's all over it. It almost means that I really need to stop using my phone. Like, no news, no, you know, like scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or any of those things. Just completely cut everything out. Yeah. So it's almost like I need a completely different lifestyle.
Yeah, I feel like 6 months ago, somewhere in there, on a medicine journey, I got the download, the information that kind of like that the currency, the new currency, or the real currency, I should say, that's always been, is our attention and our awareness.
Right.
So how we're spending what we're giving our attention to. And it kind of it gave me the phrase to like not just give my attention away, because it's valuable.
Yeah.
And they said to gift it away, like, it's, you know, use your attention, but gift it like intentionally, was like the message it gave me. And yeah, so like we're being, you know, our iPhones, our, you know, advertisements, like life is constantly pulling at our attention. Not so much life, I should say society, as it's currently being run, is constantly trying to get a hold of our attention and to get us to spill or spend our valuable attention somewhere. And notice that people also like get high on attention, like awareness. Like if you got 50,000 people looking at you, people feel that, right? People are feeding on that energy. And there's other things that feed on that attention, awareness. I feel like Lex has some things he would like to share on this. And
yeah, this is a big subject. I mean, it's a new, the world is a different world. It's not, so I'd like to use the word natural. I think we have a natural amount of things that rhythmically we would normally have, they would have happened, right? We would have had a rhythm of our lives. Like you said, you're coming into your fourth age, you know, and I think that our natural rhythms have been interrupted, and there's some deep archetypal part of ourself would have done certain things certain ways and would have been satiated, right? Like in an ultimate way. And we don't have that anymore. I mean, I'm 52 now, and I have never had the right relationship. You know, I've not had kids, and my relationships have always been a mismatch. You know, there's always been me. So let me just go to this bit now, which is that if I wanted to have a relationship now, it would be insincere. So if I wanted sex, right? Whereas I would have done this before when I was younger, I would have kept parts of myself hidden, right? And maybe acted in certain ways that might not have been really me in order to make the situation move forward to sex. Whereas now I just won't do that. And for quite some time, I won't do that, which means I'm not getting sex, right? So it's like you get punished for being authentic and being in alignment. You know, like recently, you know, I was in a situation where I literally thought for a few seconds about whether I wanted sex enough to completely fake who I was, because I could have. I could have had sex. I could have, this person sat down next to me. I could tell that if I match this person's expectations, which is not hard to do, I just listen to what they say and then respond according in the right way, I can have sex with this person, right? And then I was like, I can't do that anymore. You know? So we're supposed to have sex. Like, this is not right. This is not normal. This fracturing of us, this just breaking us all into these weird sort of separate universes. It's not natural, and so a lot of men on the planet, the circuitry that functions naturally, they look at their options and say, well, how can I connect with this part of me that should be connected with? All parts of self should be connected with, right? They should be given attention. They should be part of the experience, and they should be sort of loved, all aspects, right? And so when in our situation now, when we look at our options, one of them is to look at porn, right? Because what are the other options? Fake who you are, deceive somebody else, you know, from my point of view, just saying, you know, it's very complicated. Whereas just putting some porn on is quite simple. And, you know, so one of the things I've looked at recently is, well, is there a best version? And so I was looking at this idea of sex magic, and I was looking into it, and essentially, if we're sort of divine creative beings, part of that energy that people have called Kundalini, that I don't know much about, but it sort of matches what I'm trying to say, build up that energy as we connect to our creative aspect. And our creative aspect has been trained to present only sexually, as that feels to me. So that creative energy can create anything. It can create an idea. It can create a new way of being. It can create something physical. It could be, that energy could be put into improving your relationship with somebody that you love, right? So this huge potential is creative energy, and part of that expresses as sexual energy. Do you see what I mean? This is where I'm at the moment. I'm sort of exploring it. I'm thinking, okay, so is part of the black magic to make sure that it never gets past the sexual energy stage?
It's a big question. Yeah, so my understanding with it is that like sexual energy is at play all the time. all day, every day with us and everybody we're interacting with. There's like a light, low level of like attraction, interaction, and any impulse of connectivity or attraction is maybe a lower level, not like sex that's needed to be intercourse sex, but sexual energy of like interaction, you know, like connections, like the attraction, and that there's something there. Whenever we're attracted, there's usually something there that could be created. And then how we explore what can be created within that connection is up to us, how responsibly we engage with that. But it could, you know, it could be a good conversation. It could be like, you know, you could make music together. You could start a business together. You could do something, you know, who knows, you know, you could do an event together. It's, you know, there's some creative energy at play, and then how we explore that creative energy. And I would say that like that creative energy can grow, and sex can become a part of the expression of that creative energy. But like, and then what you're doing with that sexual energy also will manifest out into the world. Just the two people coming together and connecting starts to create an energy within the community of everyone they're connected with. And it's either putting out something beautiful into the world, or it's creating drama or static or something, you know. And so like we're creating all the time with our sexual energy. And then maybe it's just more a matter of realizing that sexual energy is happening all the time, whether or not you're getting naked and intimate and physical with that person or not. There's already sexual energy at play. And then like, I think it's maybe healthy to be explorative and interacting in many contexts that are, you know, in some ways not needing all your sexual energy to end up into a physical like intercourse intimacy. It's almost like if you could be playing on a bigger, like having many social interactions that are feeding your sexual play, then it can ease the tension of needing one person to have it all connecting with, and like that way, you know, like, and then it's, yeah, that's one way to see it, and one way that I've had it even taught to me and presented to me throughout my life.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of joy I find that comes with it when, you know, when I consciously use the sexual energy. There's a lot of life that's there, a lot of magic. So like you're saying, Lex, like, you know, sex magic. I think the more we learn to utilize that energy, it's almost like we can see between the realms, or like the paradigm. Because we no longer, I feel like I'm just no longer just a human being. Because there's like a lot of joy in that. It's like I've experienced the highs, but I've also experienced the low because of the depletion. If that makes sense. Sometimes
I was sorry, brother. You carry on.
Oh, sometimes the weird thing is like when I do masturbate, I feel like I'm more closer to humans than when I don't. Because sometimes I'm like way up there, like too high, flying way too high. I don't know if you've ever experienced that.
Puts you in your human body.
I'm in my human body, yeah.
Like the flood of the good hormone chemical release of like the, I don't know if dopamine's the right word. I don't know what's released, but something like this.
Yeah, it's so maybe it's just the trick of the entity. So like, you know, just these are just stories it says to maybe wants to, you know, just to act on the urges. These are like, you know, different forms that I've experienced.
Yeah, you know, I would say there's masturbating, and then there's pornography, and
Right.
those are two separate things in my mind. And even that word, I've been in other circles where they don't use the word masturbating, they use the word self-pleasuring.
Mm.
and like to move it into almost a more holy act, self-pleasuring, and not like something you're doing in a guilty, hidden way, but like take time to tune in with your entire body and turn it on and get it feeling good, and give it pleasure and pleasure yourself to orgasm. Beautiful. And nothing bad about that at all. And like, and this is, yeah, in the humanness, like that's something to be explored. And like, yeah, maybe even how that connection of arousal can take you into all other emotions of anger, of pain, of sadness, of elation, of hysteria, like maybe aggression, like let it move all through your body and give your entire body pleasure, and not just your genitals or whatever. Like try to like pleasure the whole body and see what that feels like. And these are things that I've learned through other teachers in like the tantric fields and these kind of things. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would say those are two different aspects happening.
So I was having, I think women deal with this. They're more comfortable with this, and it's a safe place for them. You generally, I think this is a good conversation. So women would have done what you just said, Shane, is what women tend to, a conversation that spiritual women tend to have a lot, isn't it? About what's the word? They, more than respect, it's like they're they're paying, not paying tribute. I can't think what the word is, but they're really mindful about what they're doing, and sort of they're more than okay with it. It's like, I can't think what the word is. Anyway, and so I did have some conversations with some women about it. They started the conversation and they were really comfortable with it. And us as blokes, me being a bloke, I was like, but they were so comfortable with it that it did sort of change my sort of thinking about it. Exactly like you just said, in the sense that it's sort of like, well, why not? Why not feel pleasure? Why not, all that sort of stuff. And it did help a little bit. And then another aspect of the conversation that I had with one person was she had a book, and so we would read it to each other down the phone. And the main gist of the book was that everything is energy, and things can receive more energy or release energy. And so one of the main words it used a lot was charge. And we didn't know each other that well, and quite quickly it started to be about sex and orgasms and creating charge and releasing charge. So it was a little bit uncomfortable phone call for a while, but basically it's just like, wow, that's so obvious. It's like the connection to that sexual energy is building, and it's building up charge, right? And at some point, you have a choice. In sex magic, you use that charge with an intention. Apparently, I haven't done this yet, but I'm literally thinking about this sort of stuff this week and last week. And the idea is that you, when the charge is released, it's almost like some sort of like, I don't know, sexual magical fireworks or something that you can attach a wish to, or a visualization. Just throwing that out there.
No, I've heard of this before. Yeah, it's yeah, maybe a type of like, well, I'd say it's not so different maybe from like a martial art where you're really gathering your chi, and when you strike, it's more than like a physical strike. Maybe it's like an energetic boom, and there's a type of manifesting where you're gathering your chi to really manifest in a focused and clear way. But more than sex magic, what interests me even more is self-realization. And I think sexual energy plays a big role in that, in the cultivation of like Kundalini energy and having it like move up the spine or through the chakras And these kind of things is not an easy thing to figure out or follow or learn or practice, but more just become aware that this too is something that that energy has the potential to do, which is more awaken an energy flow from the base of your spine, which is like root chakra, connecting all your chakras with a healthy flow of mana or energy that can be full on ecstatic, like orgasmically ecstatic, but maybe not even orgasm in the way that we normally know of it as a release, but orgasm more that's just like not depleting. It's just like wiggling around in your body like a snake, and it could go forever. And it's not like crescendoing, it's almost just like renewing and restoring. And there's like these kind of energies that are helping us maybe move more into our understanding and realization of the beautiful, powerful beings that we are, and continuing that evolution. And I think that's maybe even more exciting than a manipulation of using sex to get what you want in the world, or I don't know. Sometimes in that world with magic, it can, yeah, you can easily slip into black magic in that you're trying to manipulate to serve yourself, versus learn about yourself and understand the beauty and power of your own divinity, which will blow your orgasmic mind already. And yeah, it'll be more exciting and fulfilling than trying to seek one little prize here or there outside of yourself.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, it's very true. Like I have done some practices along those lines. Really bring the yeah, you know, the chi up your channels. Yeah, Mentek Chia talks a lot about that. I've read a couple of his books. It's very transformative stuff. And the funny thing is, like what you're saying and what Lex is saying, they're connected, because when I'm able to do those things, the manifestation happens naturally. Like your words become so powerful. So yeah, for me, they're like very much interconnected.
Moving to joy. And
yeah,
that's
absolutely
as hell. And people want to be near that and around that. Yeah, it feels good.
Totally. I think it also links back to, like, I think there is a level of maybe human connection, or there's a need for more human connection.
Sure.
On a planetary level, because I know that for me, it's one of the factors. Just having these, like, you know, whether we just drop in once a week, like doing like a little men's circle, like having conversation with the guys, or just even people, you know, that are open to having these conversations, being able to hold space. I think that'll go a long way. Something we used to do when I was, you know, living in communities and stuff, because a lot of people are like almost like, I feel like they are struggling through this, or they're wanting to understand more of it, but not sure where to ask. And part of it's being, like, as I said earlier, it's being one of the taboo subjects. Perhaps this would be helpful. Who knows? Like even like some of my friends that I talk to about, they're like, "Oh, it's a normal thing." Like one of my neighbor, even he would go like, you know, you're just having some trouble at home, and he would just say, "Yeah, like, you know, I'm having some trouble with my wife, but hey, guess what? Like, porn is great." And I was just like, "Wow, great, wow." It's almost becomes like a coping mechanism. I find, and it kind of relates back to the same point, as because we live in such a nuclear family, your colleagues are not really your friends, and for all I know, they could be going through something similar themselves.
Mhm.
So just having a being feeling so isolated in its own box, it's like, oh, what do I turn to? Maybe this mechanical box that I can just press a button and the world is at my feet, you know?
Mm. So yeah, I mean, it's lots of, it's a tangle of a few things, isn't it? There's a natural part of us that is not easily activated and used. You know, it's like it's being kept from its normal way of doing things, and it's sort of crying out to us in lots of ways. You know, on many things. So for instance, I vape, and I sat and I used to smoke, and I switched over to this about 5 years ago. I was like, well, why do I do this? And I realized that what I'm doing is I'm fulfilling my connection circuitry. I'm not in a relationship. I can't get into a relationship. I'm just too difficult to be around, it seems. So a relationship is you crave something, and when you get it, it satisfies you, and it's always there, and you can rely on it, and all that sort of stuff. And as silly as it sounds, I sat and thought about my vaping. I thought, well, that's what this is. This is my relationship. I'm activating and utilizing my normal relationship circuitry that another human being would be part of with this fucking shit, right? But it works. And unless I get a relationship or become, you know, so the next phase would be to know that, and to say, okay, so I need to create a relationship that is healthy, that with something, you know, and so then that, you know, maybe it was breath work. Maybe I keep thinking that breath work is the way to go. Substitute out the vaping with breath work. So it's still a relationship. It's still the same thing, and it's very, very similar, but it would be transformationally better, right? So
both together instead of trying to give up one for the other. Just try to
right,
weave them in and weave in more things. Yeah.
right. So what I'm Gabor Mate is one of my go-tos when I'm sort of struggling to understand myself and my place in the world. I watch a lot of this stuff, and so addictions is a lot of addictions is to do that. So there's a real thing happening, which is that essentially, if you had like 2 girlfriends and a side piece, this might not be a conversation, right? Or if you were married, or if you were involved in some incredible project that was calling on all of your creative energy, and you were fulfilled and appreciated and accepted, and you were just vibing on life, and it was flowing from you into you being a thing that does stuff in the world. You know what I mean? Like if all of that was activated. So I think there's a big issue. I'll stop talking now.
No, it's really good. You know, two things are coming up in both these conversations. One is like our need for touch. I think that's real, and we don't have many outlets for finding that in normal society or whatever. But I got invited to this party a couple of years ago called like a cuddle and consent party, and it's beautiful. Really teaches healthy boundaries is what it teaches, and teaches how to ask and get permissions, and how to set clear boundaries, and how to honor other people's boundaries. And when you can start to play in a place where there's healthy boundaries in place, and there's respect and honoring of those boundaries, including the ability for people to change their mind in the moment, and for that to also be honored. And we learn how to play in these kind of ways, then it creates spaces and situations where you can ask for what you want and need, or what's comfortable. And then you could also create a situation where you could cuddle or touch or hold hands or caress or something, and let it be what it is, which is our need for touch and connection. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're starting a relationship or whatever. Maybe you're there to just be touched, to touch and be touched, and to feel, to be held or to be cuddled, and to explore those needs and explore those connections. And I think that's one aspect. And the other aspect is something I touched on earlier, is to have as many people in your life as possible to spread those needs out across in healthy ways. Healthy boundaries doesn't mean you're necessarily in a sexual relationship with every one of them. It's like, it's knowing healthy boundaries. Like, this is my person that I can cuddle with here. This person I can drop in deep conversation. This is a person I can have sleepovers with here. Like, this is, you know, have many people to then it's not putting it all your needs on one person, to like, that's a stranger that you haven't met yet. Then it's a heavy ask at that point. And it can start to get more clarity on like, hey, do I just need to, I'm just needing to cuddle tonight. I just need to, like, is that what I'm needing? Or, then you can kind of be clear on that. Then maybe if you can establish that connection and that healthiness, then your head's clear for what else you're needing beyond that. Do I want to be in a full-time relationship? Maybe not. Maybe I just want to be able to cuddle, every now and then and feel good, or have someone who wants to be in an open relationship or something like that. There's a bigger territory that could be explored there, but it requires trust, respect, and the building of healthy boundaries to get there, to not be trespassing someone else's healthy boundaries, and to help uphold what their needs are and their words are, and to not try to seduce or move past what they've asked of you already. And then in that, there starts to become a wealth of exchange that can happen. And trust that's building in friendships. And the more friends we can have, the healthier we are in this life. The more connections and friendships can become wealthy that way. And I feel that's a pathway into more exploration as well. Yeah.
Have you got stuff to say, Mano? Because I've got something that I could say after.
I was gonna say, yeah, I agree with what Shane is saying, and it requires a lot of conversation. It requires a lot of being in tune with yourself. And these are practices I've had, I've got the privilege of experiencing before, and it is really beautiful to have that kind of interaction with another human being. And I've also learned a lot about myself through these practices with the help of other and different aspects of me that comes out. Otherwise, I wouldn't have picked it up by being in just a typical relationship, just with one person. I can just say easily that jealousy was one of the factor. Like, how do I feel when someone I'm interested in, exchanging a healthy boundary with someone else? But these are like a really good ways of just addressing who you are and like what do you like and how do you get your needs met. So I think that's what's just alive within me. What were you gonna say, Lux?
Okay, so it's a sort of a slight shift. We did talk about it a little bit in a way, which was that, one way you could say it is it sort of commandeering our divine energy into something a bit darker, and is that some sort of parasitic entity or circuitry? And one of the things I'm working on at the moment, I've been working on the energy parasite entities around us that we can't see, influencing our thoughts and behaviors, like whispering to us and imitating our voice and stuff like that, which has been called schizophrenia and all that sorts of stuff. But interesting studies, when people around the world actually investigated what the voices were saying, they actually had recognizable personalities through different time periods in different parts of the world, which is not what was suggested. What was suggested originally was that people would be just hearing crazy stuff that was generated by a disassembling psyche, and that wasn't what happened at all. It was actually almost like people felt as if they could say that this entity in this person at this time in this place was almost identical to this entity in this person in a different place in a different time, and it just started to seem a little bit like some sort of supernatural event, and that there were literally sort of knowable entities involved, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I am definitely holding that as part of the way I see the world. Like I factor that in to all these sorts of things when we talk about them. And working with that didn't get me past my illness, my personal illness at the moment. And luckily, synchronicity started to show me that there are physical parasites as well. And so I'm beginning a lifelong process of dealing with physical parasites, and I'm working my way into it, and I'm going to do phases, all that sort of stuff. But it's a big thing. I think physical parasites, when you study how they work in the world, they do seem to be intelligent enough to elicit impulses and behaviors that activate energy pathways and chemical activations in the body. So, for instance, a friend of mine had, when we talked through all this stuff and he started his protocols, he had to go and have an operation to have a cyst removed between a major vein and a major nerve in his throat. Well, it would be a perfect place for a physical parasite to be, because it could tap into the nervous system and essentially dial up, like take away, any number of different chemicals and nutrients by creating moods, right? So if there's an associated anger chemical cocktail, it could just dial up anger, right? It could feed on the blood at the same time. And then, so I was thinking that maybe quite a lot of our issues that we've put down to needing to meditate more are that we are physically inhabited by things that have their own agenda and are sending us impulses.
Yeah, it's a good thing to factor in. I think that's it's proven that, like, yeah, there's parasites within the body can kind of influence your own cravings for sugars or things that keep them alive and strong in there. And I would say there's also like interdimensional parasites as well, that are feeding on fear and other like subtle emotions of the human being that keep us, that it serves them to keep us in a disempowered or fearful state, and that what we emit or emote from our fear is something that they can feed on. And that's a factor to take into consideration. Yeah, I think we're on a good theme here with parasite and areas where we lose our energy and what is being like pulled on us, and something that we were kind of building even before we hit record tonight was a little bit of like why we're having these conversations. What is it that we're wanting to get out of them, or what are we hoping to address or speak to, or in these, why bother, maybe is the question. But like, and then maybe how we can move this theme of the parasite into like spiritual evolution of our species. How is this, is it stopping our evolution? Is it preventing the growth of us? Like where's the breaking point where we move through these things, move past them? And it's definitely a challenge to our own personal spiritual growth as we encounter these things.
Okay, so my reason for being part of your group is to do as much as I can to be someone who tries to ground spirituality. My conversation that I had with whatever you want to call it was that what we need is to be more grounded than ever and more spiritual than ever, and that there's a particular way to do that, and that in doing so we become a highway of talk and knowledge and power and divinity and love and everything between the two separate things, which is good for everyone. So grounding spirituality for me involves lots of different ways to look at it, but one of the ones I'm looking at the moment is that we have two hemispheres of brain. The left hemisphere is dominant in the world right now. The right has been closed down through methods like education. So imagination, creativity, and ability to sort of fantasize has been suppressed as much as possible, and anything that was left was controlled. And then mostly left brain is what's been put on to people, which is why everyone seems mechanical and sort of zombie-like and programmable, because that's how the left brain works. The response to that is for people to run as fast as they can, shut down left brain and only use right brain and disappear into fantasy, which is why we have infinite versions of reality now, which isn't useful. It can be lovely and compassionate and empathic and friendly and kind and all those things, but unfortunately it just can't handle reality. Reality is like, it just associates all reality with the left brain stuff that's happening in the world. And I believe that what we need is for both of those aspects to be fully online and inform each other in exactly the same way as we need to be more spiritual and more grounded, more heavenly and more earth. By them both being online in communication with each other, we fantasize, we imagine, but it becomes real because the left brain handles how to turn that into reality. And sometimes it gently says to the right side of the brain, listen, that's not possible, but we can do this. And we won't say we, never do that, but we'll have to put that later. But we can do that now, so let's do that now. And so you get this real output from the imagination, from creativity, from spirituality into action, into the world. And that is the secret that brings everything together, is that we've got people who've run into right brain, and we've got people who are in left brain, and neither of those people are helping the situation right now. So I'm here to try and tell everyone that.
Yeah. Thanks, Lex. For me, it's there's a lot of similarities to what you just shared. But for me, it's also about like sharing quality time with conscious beings, talking about topics that are important, that are alive, and also giving almost like a collector audience a voice, if that makes sense. Or perhaps what's going on in the collective, people might not be open to sharing or open to hearing certain type of these conversation, but like a voicing them. Hey, like, are you aware of this? Or like, do you know that this is going on? And these are possibilities or ways that you can try. And the other piece of it, it's being for me to show people that they're not alone. Like I find that there's a lot of people have like a similar experience. I find that a lot of people are like a very genuine being, but almost like having to grow like a really thick skin in order to survive in this world that may feel like a harsh. And just to share with them out loud, hey, you don't need to be like, all tough and like a change who you are fundamentally in order to survive. There are other ways of being. Just because only this reality is presented in front of you, this is not the only existing reality, and these are other realities that exist. They coexist, and you have a choice. And that's, like, don't give your power away, like, is to put it in a simple form. Yeah, so those are just like a little points that that I wish people get from listening to these conversations. And personally, for me, it is like, in a lot of ways, it is healing for me, and something share that earlier in the conversation, to share like what exactly is going on in my life, in my day to day, and to be heard, and to perhaps hear some perspective I haven't paid attention to or I haven't contemplated, bring a new perspective into my reality, thus create a better reality for myself. So those are some of the key points and why I think what we're doing is very important.
Awesome. Thank you both. There's two different angles on that. Yeah, I have to say, part of my motivation for hosting these conversations is sometimes it's like going to work and making money and paying the rent at the end of the month is just like maddening for me, because I'm like, there's so much going on that we need to address, and I feel like no one's even talking about it. And it's like continuing to just be like cogs in the machine is not going to get us anywhere. Like I feel like the structure of society is heading to like self-destruct, and people seem to be overly optimistic or conveniently naive about that. But I think if they ground in, there's more than enough signs. There's nothing but signs in every direction saying we're not living healthily, and we're not operating healthy as a society, as a human species, and yet our potential is so grand, and we're not addressing that huge difference between who and what we are on the inside and what we're seeing on the outside. And to me, if a closer look starts to reveal tons of obvious information, and I would like to have more people gathering together to talk about that discrepancy and how we can start to gather the collective mind together to start to move in a new direction. And I know it's beyond me to drive that, but I wish to be a part of that and help facilitate the conversations for that to happen.
Yeah, and so that is perfect, I think. The conversation part, I started running Zooms a while ago, and there's an art to it. There's an art to the conversation that I see it as, fairly wanting to simplify everything, wanting to be grounded. And what does that mean, being grounded? Well, I think that science was part of the story, and it's just literally looking around and observing and remembering things and making a map of reality. How does this work? What causes this? What causes that? And then you get to the point where you can be creative and you can say, well, if that causes that and I put that there, but now you're inventing, now you're generating, and genius is starting to present itself magically into things, and consciousness is starting to create with that knowledge. And what I see is that we've reached a point where everybody is somewhere different, arguing with everybody else. And so I don't think we're going to be able to get away from argument, but what we need is an argument that leads to results. We need an argument that if something proves itself, that is accepted, and that is then placed in a pile of accepted things, and we move forward and we add to that pile, and we use that pile of accepted things to agree on the world, right? And that's the bit that's a problem, is that as soon as I get people into a conversation where it's like, okay, say your thing, your way you see the world, the way you believe the things, right? Okay. Now, there are multiple versions that contradict what you just said. So you are going to say your perspective is that you're right and they're wrong. And everyone's got that perspective. And so at some point, everyone needs to realize that we're all wrong, right? And we're all right. And what we need to do is separate the rightness and the wrongness that each of us has, and all of us put it into the same pot. And that is now the thing. Everyone went through their stuff and worked out what was right and what was wrong. And they took the right and they put it in the middle. And everybody put the right in the middle. And if that's only like 4 or 5 things, then fine. That's what we build from. And those would be the foundations of conscious sanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important to recognize that, and also to bring like a higher level of clarity within ourselves, because I think it does take like certain level of clarity even for a person to recognize when they're right and when they're wrong. Without that level of clarity, it's almost like pointing fingers, not being able to see beyond their sense of perception. So I do find that people have to be willing. They have to be wanting to make the change themselves, and like I said, willing to see the ultimate truth beyond their own perceptual. And the ego will stand in the way, because it's almost like it's a safe ground. How do we tell someone, hey, everything that you know up to this point, it's wrong. It's not how it is, and this is how it is. And that's like a destruction of their worldview or like their perception. And that can be a very challenging thing. It could possibly even put people through psychosis. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so a lot of the work I've done is starting that process safely. And so the first one was to get people to investigate who they really were, which, you know, and so everyone assumes, well, I'm me, right? And then if you get people to the point where you say, okay, clear your mind, don't think any thoughts, just sit there and don't think anything, clear your mind, right? And everyone at some point, they're struggling. Most people at some point, they're struggling, hear their own voice say, wow, this is hard, or I can't stop thinking, or shut up, or something like that. An extra voice comes in that I would say is the real you that has reached the level of speaking into mind, right? And so I'd say, well, look, there was a separate you from all the noise in your head. So what if the noise in your head isn't really you? What if you could clear that board completely, right? Just delete everything there, right? Okay, that might be too much because you'd be sort of, how would you act in the world? You wouldn't have any sense of self, right? So for me, ego is a word to describe what is happening in your head. And if you locate yourself as consciousness and you come in and redesign what's in your head, you choose what's in your head and you get better at controlling what's in your head. You become, you know, take it to the level of art where what's in your head is now art. It's beauty. It's an incredibly refined, useful, supportive, um, articulate space that consciousness can inhabit, right? That's the work. And that's what we need is to know that there's this thing, the user, the player, but part of the game starts before we think it does. It starts before the outside world. It's in us that the part of the game has to be played first.
absolutely. And I believe that that's needed more and more. And I think the sooner we can do that, it's the better. Because I'm keep getting the messages that the year 2027 is going to be big, and that's when a lot of the illusions are going to break apart. And I feel that the more people can see this within themselves, see the illusions, now they'll be a lot more prepared than still being caught in the mind of stories or mind of thought and not be able to breach and see, see about how it's all like, holding us like basically hostage. Our thoughts are like in some ways holding us hostage or prisoners. There'll be a lot more challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, short of like trying to educate everyone, I think also attraction is a powerful force. And the more we can demonstrate it, not just even as individuals, but as demonstrated in groups or collectives, it'll be more apparent and attractive to others who haven't given it thought yet. Like if there's more of us gathering together to kind of begin creating from that like artistically organized inner screen of our, by choosing and being sovereign about who and what we are, and then gathering with other sovereign as well to begin to create a new scene on the earth, it would be more attractive to others to see that there's that alternative maybe to something that they haven't given thought about, but it also doesn't feel comfortable. And then they could look over and see something that like, hey, there's a natural beauty going on there. There's a natural harmony, or there's like music coming from that space that's attractive. And I think it may be more in that direction is, for short of trying to educate people that we think aren't getting it, we're going to be better served by finding those that we resonate with already and can find harmony without as much struggle, and if it's like, how bad did the people want it? Like if there's a certain amount of, it's easy to get sick on society, and you have to be kind of sick on it to be like, hey, no, thank you. And as you look other way, you can kind of see how many other people are turning and looking the other way and moving out of step with society to try to like establish, you know, good drinking water, good food, good environment, good, like, you know, protection of life and taking care of each other and looking out, like moving in that direction. A question I have that kind of goes a layer below into more like what your core beliefs are. If the three of us were to, like, this was our last conversation, we don't do this, and say, you know, say our human contracts are up and we're done and our souls are moving on, and we leave our bodies next week or something, and we're not a part of this earth story, but we can kind of like peek in and see it happening still. I guess the question I have for you, without us, you know, saving the day and being heroes or something, what happens to the earth? What happens to humanity?
I mean, I think the direct answer that is available within me, it's humanity will ascend in its own time frame. Whether that's tomorrow, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, a million years from now, it will continue to ascend. It may not be on this physical plane, physical form,
Yeah.
especially on the trajectory that it's on. It's one of the ways I'm seeing is that we're leaving the human aspect behind and just so focused on just this material aspect, and I find that as like a detrimental to all of like humanity as a whole, and like missing this the purpose, like I want to use the word soul purpose, but like that is the point. Soul is missing.
Yeah, what does ascend mean for you? When you're saying this, if humanity ascends, what does that look like in your mind?
It's me turning around and recognizing the person that's sitting across from me is of the same essence as me, just in a different physical body. I maybe have a different, language that they speak, but inevitably, me and that person, we are of the same, let's call it light, but just in a separate body. And I think it's similar to what we tapped on earlier. Us ascending for me means the separation, this illusion fades away. There is a level of harmony that perhaps I've only experienced it when I am surrounded by nature, just in pure nature, or when I am in medicine ceremonies. That level of harmony, it's like hearing the most peaceful flute that's being played right next to me, with waterfall running on the other side. Just that level of harmony, and just somehow it just feels right. It just feels like we made it, I do feel that that's inevitable, but how we get there, I think that's the time that we are in right now. The struggles, just to getting to that place. Like, do we want it enough? Are we ready for it? Are we ready to transcend our traumas, all the things that's holding us back, to the point it's like no matter how much of a temptation that there is to fall back to a certain addiction or certain patterns, the answer will be no. I do not want it. I had enough of it. No more trauma. That level, that level of, I guess, equanimity within ourselves. That we don't want, like, the craving of the pleasure. At the same time, we don't want the aversion of the pain. Because we can't have one without the other.
the pain and the pleasure. It's just the duality that we're playing in right now. It's ascending beyond that, just coming. But I also question, at that level, will we continue to exist? In a sense that will we have a human body? Will we in this three-dimensional plane? Because I feel that in this three-dimensional plane, there is that separation.
Okay, so for me, I do see sort of a holographic universe with data and programs and evolvement of logic and reason, and at some point an intangible, impossible leap into self-awareness and consciousness, and that continued and evolved. And for me, that is part of what's in me. I recognize it, I feel it, and I want my urges to protect it, and to know that it's unbelievably valuable is only my way of seeing reality. And that around us at the moment is something else, something less evolved, less, not evolved enough for compassion and wisdom and love, and something, basic and more primitive in terms of a code. And so I've had experiences that I've experienced in the old fashioned way, so like one of my experiences was recently, about 5 years ago, was a Benedictine monk appeared in front of me and told me that we were about to enter into something called a nexus, and that it was a vortex of possibilities with a massive, an unusually large amount of energy, and that everything would be amplified. And I saw what the amplified negative outcome would be, and it was bad. And I'd seen it before, around about 1997. I had an experience where I saw something, a potential future, or I had a dream or an imagination, and it was bad. I mean, it was bad, really, really bad. And it drove me to be different, to look for everyone around me that was different, to join together and to try and change the outcome, literally, be part of that. And so for me, there is no definite outcome. I can't tell you what's going to happen, but I can sort of see the best and worst versions, and the best version is awesome. The best version is like a fever breaks in this place, and the healing is fast, and the strength comes back, and the magic and the imagination and the connection and the love, and the joy and the laughter and the closeness and the connection. It just all comes back, and it's like rebuilding after some sort of tornado or something.
Beautiful. So it's the potentials are high, and it's almost like there's multiple timelines, and not all of them are successful. Is that kind of the vision?
Yeah, and I don't know for certain. Like people talk about timelines, and there's another version where each one of us is in a different reality, and they're sort of like Venn diagrams, and they're overlapping, and so you can jump to different, people say dimensions, don't they, and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know about any of that for certain. It feels to me like it's a certain type of code that is so complex that it's what we would call a god, an omniscient self-awareness. And for me, there's more than one code line. There's one that represents what we would call female, and one that represents what you would call male. And that they actually, part of what you have to account for is the relationship between them, which is not actually present anywhere. You know, like, so if you're being scientific, you could track the code lines and you could say, well, this code line and this code line, but actually it's the invisible relationship between them that is the extra factor, you know, that is the love, that God is love and everything is love and love is the answer and all that sort of stuff. But for me, as well as that, there's also these other code lines, demon lines, which are singular lines. And so for me, dai means way, mon means singular. Anyone that's in the left brain new age at the moment, right brain new age at the moment only is a demon. Anyone in the left brain psychopath is a demon. And only when the two hemispheres come online does everything become divine. Only when the two code lines are reunited together and their relationship is back. This is how I see things. And so, yeah, that could happen again amongst infinite time. The situation where two separate things can love each other, yeah, that could come back. But that's what's at risk for me is that whole concept of love itself. And if we prevail, I believe that we seed love into the rest of reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the vision of like a fever breaking. That's a cool way to put it. Yeah. And then it spreads quickly, like across to the species, to the planet. And then you're saying that if we can kind of see that strength or hope, belief in love, that enough to manifest it, that it would go even maybe beyond the earth or human species kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so let me just quickly say this, just to tie in my theory, my way of thinking is that I believe everything is sort of holographic, or that's a way to describe it that's useful. And so every bit of everything is in every bit of us, and we're in everything as well, right? And so if any individual becomes love, they become love in everything, right? But if we transform this place, the amount of love in everything that is transformed is more.
Right.
It's louder, it's bigger, it's brighter.
Yeah, I see that. I agree with that. Yeah. Manu, in your vision of like the ascension, and it's questionable whether it's still in the physical 3D at that point, you said. Is the physical 3D world like a failed project at that point, or how do you see that? Like,
I think we're constantly like a moving up and down thing. I think that's where the karma comes into play, because there are some ascended beings that choose to come back to help support the humanity. To those who are ready to ascend, they help them ascend. And that's how I see it. I think we would always have a need for this three-dimensional plane, whether that's on Earth or somewhere else. And I also believe that there are different dimensions that already exist within Earth. Just that majority of us can sense the three-dimensional plane, just because of what we can see at this given point. Therefore, I do see that as perhaps in order for us to completely feel that, I think this is what I perhaps would call it like the Buddha consciousness. When you get to that point, like enough is enough, you're ready. You're willing to let everything go, and you just see all your past life, and you don't want to have to do this any longer, and then you just allow yourself to go to that higher plane, but for good. There's no coming back, or like unless again, like you're volunteering to come back. And I do feel that there are a lot of people that are here on this earth that are from a different place, from a higher place. But it also comes with a challenge. The challenge is that you forget your divinity per se, so that you can fully embody being a human. And it's somewhat similar to what I was talking about earlier, about just being on top of my practices, doing everything, feeling so good, like the whole world would be falling apart, or just like it's on fire, or everything. Whereas I feel like it's super aligned, super grounded, as long as I'm in tune, connected to my spirit or to my higher self from within. But when I start abusing that kind of connection and using it for pleasure and not being mindful with my energy, then again, it feels like I'm just dropped. So it's definitely fascinating for me to observe even the different planes that I get to witness within myself. So I just want to tie that in. So it's up to us. And somehow I feel like this current society, like where I am in this matrix, at least this part of the world, it's almost like there is a need for control. And every time I feel like so high, like whenever I'm doing work and this and that, like outside of this area, I feel like, okay, I'm ready to go back in. I think I'm ready to make a shift, change. Then I come back in, and then again the challenge hits. It's like I'm transformed, I've changed, but I have to deal with the collective energy of this. And taking all of that head on, it almost like it loses, like I lose sense of my own identity as of who I am, and just kind of get pulled into it. I think it's similar to what Lex was talking about. There are moments of it's in a sense like a transcending every aspect of who I am. Like the name doesn't matter, where I came from doesn't matter, the language I spoke didn't matter, like all of that. Like there's no identity. And when there was no identity, I'm left with like a nothingness. It can feel great, but it can also feel absolutely terrifying. Especially who I am surrounded by, and almost like I need that ego to be able to survive in this world. But then again, the challenge of that, to be able to have had those experiences and coming back into the place that has such a strong egoic identity, it's almost like I can pick up on others. So coming back, being in tune constantly, like a clearing my own energetic field, coming back into the truth of my own being, these conversations are very helpful. It allows me to tap into spaces within myself that I wouldn't normally feel safe or comfortable going into. Not just that, I don't also see that like I cannot necessarily go and have this conversation with my father because I don't think he would understand. That makes sense. So yeah, those are just a little things.
I love that. That's this. We're in the zone. I feel we're in the zone. So then, at the moment, what people have sort of shown us since we were born is that a lot of people from the spiritual would say that when you were no one, that was good. Well done. You've aced it, right? But you know that to do the work, to live in the world, to be of this place, that it's not quite right. It's something a bit wrong with it. And so you came back in. But what if there's a version of that where you have an ego and the silent you learns to speak as ego and replace the ego that came to you from your life, right? And there's this transition process, which takes a bit of time, but essentially you then have an ego. What you then are doing is bringing spirit into the world. You're not saying, well, either I can be of this place, made by this place, as this place, or nothing. Maybe, is there a version where you step into that place and spirit steps into it, consciousness steps into it, and fills it in a way that can deal with the world whilst still being uniquely something special, you know?
I mean, I find that like, like this, speaking from like a spirit's perspective, the spirit doesn't have any interest in playing the game of ego. Like it has like absolutely zero interest. It doesn't care. It couldn't care less about like a fame or like anything. The way I feel into it is just to feel, just be at peace. Because I find that in its true essence, it is peace. It is one, not like a fragments. And I find that when there is ego involved, there are fragments, there are difference, there are separation. And that's why my question of like, can we still exist as one in this three-dimensional plane?
What is the problem with the 3-dimension aspect of this plane? Why is the 3 dimensions part of it a problem? The length, depth, breadth, width, height, the fact that things can be a certain distance from you, that things can have volume. Why is that an issue?
As long as there is time, there is separation.
Okay, right. Let's get this done then. What's the problem with time?
Like I said, that's what I mean. Like, you see, like three-dimensional plane has like separation. That's what I'm trying to say. So time creates separation. Time creates past, present, and future.
Agreed. But what's the problem with that?
There isn't any problem. I'm saying as long as there is time, there is separation. As long as there is separation, how do we find oneness in a place of separation?
Okay, right. So this is my thoughts, right? Reality is literally difference. Everything we recognize because it's different from everything else, right? Our whole experience of anything is the fact that it's not the same as that. It's not as loud, not as bright, not as big, not as close. It looks different. It has a different texture. Everything we experience is different. If you take away difference, there's no experience. You would literally be a dot of nothingness, nowhere, doing nothing, right? That's not a win-win for me.
Yeah, I mean, this is the very thing that I'm saying that ego is afraid of. The ego is very much afraid of being nothing.
But you could just shoot yourself in the face and then you'll be nothing, right? Why fuck about with being alive?
That's the point. Like, but being a spirit, let's say you're everything. You are alive. Like, you're nothing at the same time. You're everything. I think that's for me, in essence, being a spirit is. But we need this three-dimensional plane to experience the complex, the differences. So I'm not saying that the 3D, there is anything wrong with this three-dimensional plane, but I'm saying as long as we're in this three-dimensional plane, there will be suffering and there will be pleasure. They're like, they go hand in hand.
But you said, and I'm not being a dick. It's just that this is happening globally. There's billions of people who are repeating this message: oneness, right? Rising above duality. I think that's coming from the code lines that want to disintegrate this place, right? I think that this place is up for deletion, every single fucking bit of it, right? And we're not doing ourselves any favors by buying into it. Why do you want to delete this place? Let's make it better. Let's make it fun. Let's make it beautiful. Let's make it gorgeous. Let's make it like, oh God, everyone wants to come here. This is the place to be. Not let's make it fucking dissolve into nothing and disappear up our own asses forever.
Yeah, I'm with you, Lex. I think that this place is infinite potential, and the 3D is not inherently faulted in its original matrix. It's good. It's beautiful. I think it's twisted at the moment in a, this particular scene on Earth in the here and now is twisted in an unhealthy way. But I don't think that's the original blueprint of 3D reality. And I'd also offer this perspective that it's my understanding that ego is at the spirit level as well, that there's oneness, and the second there's not oneness, the second there's two-ness or more than oneness, there's ego. And ego is the very thing that says you are a new creation separate from the oneness, even though you're still the oneness. But in order to have this experience, you're going to need to be wrapped in a new ego, a new expression, a new robe that says you are no longer the total of the one. You're now on a new mission, a new birth out into the world, and to grow and to learn. And I would say, it's my understanding that is a potentially eternal life, to be separate and in awareness that you're a part of the one, on that growing journey that feeds back into the one. It don't have to be, and it doesn't have to continue forever, but it potentially could, is my understanding, that is, you're on a growing journey, and coming to 3D reality is a part of that growing journey. Like, we learn things here that we couldn't learn anywhere else, and we bring our unique egoic spirit self here to bring a very specific version of our gifts and magic into this space to help create something that's very unique. I don't think we're here to dissolve back into one as much as we're here to bring a unity field, while still expressing the full diversity of all the individuated selves that in their more sovereign state are not only are they being sovereign humans, they're ready to continue on to be sovereign spirits, no matter whether they're in this dimension or another one. And that they're awake to that, and so that they're going to be acting as that as a human being as well.
I'm in agreement. And Mano, let me apologize for my tone. That tone wasn't directed at you. It was about how I feel about the thing that I'm seeing around everywhere. And so you're a lovely, beautiful person, right? So please don't take that personally. I can't control my tongue around those subjects, but it wasn't at you personally.
Thanks for saying that, Lex. And I wasn't taking it personally. This is a good conversation to be had, and express what's alive within yourself, right? And that's part of the reason why we have these conversations. And I'm all up for creating this three-dimensional play a more beautiful place than it is. And so people look at it and say oh, it's really beautiful. Again, it depends on what perspective you look at it from, right?
It's okay. We could do better, right?
That's usually it.
Yeah. I would say we are currently doing better, in that we're here to keep evolving it into something more amazing. And we're also not happy with where it is currently. So we're very much here to help evolve it into a more beautiful direction, and to, I think, absorb the wisdom and lessons of how it got where it got, and what we gained from it being in the state of imbalance or self-destructiveness, and how it arrived here. There's a lot of learning and wisdom, I think, and I think we're here to integrate that as we move forward, to not intentionally recreate this level of suffering ever again. If we can avoid that, it's not something that I think at the heart of creation we wish to see happening on a regular basis. And I think we allow our experience to go very broad to learn a lot, and we're maybe at our thresholds of pain in where we are in it right now. There's a concept I'd like to throw out just to see how you to receive it. There's a book I read recently, LSD and the Mind of the Universe. Beautiful book. If I can remember author's name. I'll mention it or put it below in the story. But part of his vision is that visited him over the course of 20 some years was the entire human race being a type of God entity that inhabited this space. And it's like one being. And that one being is having a very, interesting experience, as there are many God beings having all kinds of experiences everywhere. But this, one being is expressed in all the humans, like all 8 billion humans of us would be basically, holographic parts of that one whole, who, a God entity, not like the God, like another God entity, being the human race. And that, and so it allowed for the somewhat of the paradox of that one God being itself, as well as all of us individuals also being, individual souls within that one God soul that is the human race. And as we come here to be ourselves and learn our lessons in this life, we're also participating in this one God being's kind of like evolution as well. And that this God being is in a bit of a sleepiness it's about to awaken from. And we're here in the whole human race being in a little bit of that like sleepy state, coming to an awakened state. And we're playing our own roles and both being affected by that and doing our own karmic learnings and growths within it, and seeing what we can do to assist it in its evolution and in its awakening and in its growth. And that would be, like you said, Lex, that like fever that would break. There's that, I believe that there's that potential of that whole being, as that percentage of that whole being comes to an awakeness, that could spread quickly throughout the body of that one species pretty rapidly at some point. I'm kind of in the throes, but I'll just offer that concept out there. I feel like I've heard it in other places as well, because it was something I somewhat already had in my own belief system. And then when I read it in the book, I really liked his description of it. And I was like, yes, that's how I understand it to be as well. But I'll just offer that vision.
See, I like that, and that is it's definitely workable, because if you explore it from a scientific point of view, it stands up. It stands up from a philosophical point of view, and also if you looked at mysticism and spirituality, it stands up with that as well. Like, it could handle being brought into a conversation by any of those groups, and it would work. If everyone was prepared to sort of be okay with using that kind of language. And I don't think there's any other way than something singular then breaks into smaller parts. Like, if you start with science and say there was nothing, nowhere, and then we're in amongst something. So if we track that back logically from nothing went into something, right? So let's say it went into one or two, or all of it at once. Either way, you've got one thing separating into a whole of separateness, right? So it's like that contradiction, isn't it? It's that sort of impossible being of being one thing, but also being all things at the same time. So it totally fits into that mysticism, that loose language, that poetic sort of version, but it also works scientifically. Like, that's logic as well.
Yeah, it's a beautiful worldview, and the book is fascinating. And his vision for the future is very beautiful and optimistic, of the future human being of a type of diamond soul, he says, that's like super radiant, and that's what we're evolving into. And it's kind of, he sees it as an inevitability of like, it's already kind of in the history books, and he was kind of shown it as to learn about it or whatever. And but that we're still heading into rougher waters way there, but that's it's a part of a bigger, longer story that's been, you know, building up to this moment for a long time is the way he understood it and wrote about it. But,
Also, from my point of view, I find that really, really palatable, easy to hold as a definite. It's like it's almost inarguable that there was, you know, you've got this concept of infinity and where did everything come from? It was always there. That's impossible. Everything came from nothing. That's impossible. So you're into impossibility, but a sort of a gentle way to describe it would be that, you know, what you just said. And then if it was a mind, then, and if we said that everything's fractal and you keep finding the same things at different scales and in different versions, that would make sense, because then the male and female that comes next would be the two hemispheres of that mind.
mhm.
So, I mean, like I'm not saying it is male and female, that's a reduced description, but you can almost sense that, well, if there's this oneness and then it becomes two-ness, that gives you your duality, that now you have the experience, like instantly, bang, we're into experience.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's very much created intentionally to have this wide range of experience. Mhm. And maybe we've been, you know, as we explore and create, we keep, you know, naturally pushing our own boundaries, maybe, on what we can contain as far as streams and duality, you know. Well, I feel like it's been a full conversation for tonight, and maybe we'll go ahead and allow it to come to a close, and we'll move into this final phase where we take a couple of breaths and find our center and feel into the conversation from its beginnings until now, and feel into our own selves for today, and anything and everything that this conversation has moved within you, and do your best to clear your channel and call in your higher self perspective of the wisdom that's come through tonight. What should be highlighted or, you know, made note of right now? How can we speak to that in closing to kind of draw the essence of what we've spoken about, to bring any final closing points out loud here into our circle?
I want to thank both you guys for being here, making it happen, especially Mano, who's not feeling too good. You're a good one for being here anyway. And you guys are so good at dealing with things. Like my energy can be off sometimes, and you guys are so good with it, calm and comfortable and kind and understanding. So I want to thank you for that as well. And I thought this conversation was really, really good.
Thank you, Lex. It's beautiful.
Thank you, Lex. Yeah, it's been a beautiful conversation for me, vulnerable one, but good. It's yeah, I just feel a sense of gratitude to be able to just drop in deep and to address the shadows that's been lurking around. And what's alive within me is to also to be expressed. It's to prepare for the long journey. Stop looking at life as such a short thing, but really settle up, tighten the belt. It's gonna be it's gonna get rocky a bit, and but it's gonna be worth a while.
Learn to trust the guidance that's flowed through you, flowed through me. Yeah, just keep asking for guidance, and it will be revealed. Thank you both for holding space and sharing the truth of your own being into the space. A lot of appreciation for the space and time, and both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like words that are coming through are like connection and camaraderie, and like I felt that there's good brotherhood tonight, and especially for all of the visions that we spoke of. There's encouragement in that. There's a sense at the end of this conversation of not needing to do any of the hard work alone. It's almost like as we head into tougher times, we also head into new levels of connection and community that are like stronger and more beautiful and more tucked in than we've ever felt. And that's almost like the nectar that helps it make the rough times a sweeter ride as we start to finally see some beauty that we've maybe been desiring or craving for a long time in our lives. And I feel like it was happening inside this conversation tonight. It felt very, it felt good. I felt I could relax into this space and address tough things and uncomfortable things and all of it, but with ease and relaxing and respect. And it feels good. Feels really good. Want to thank both you gentlemen for showing up and for continuing to make these conversations amazing and real and grounded and spiritual and all that. Left brain and right brain. Yeah. Awesome. And so I just open the floor if anything else you two would like to say in closing before we end the video.
I feel complete.
I'm happy. It was a great conversation. We all listened to each other and took risks with what we said, and can't do any more than that.
Agreed. Thank you all who listen. Till next time. Good night.